Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. One of the first things we need to do is get underneath the hood, and we're going to remove this cover. To remove the cover, let's come right over here to the oil fill neck. We don't need to only remove the cap, we need to remove the whole neck. So grab right onto it, turn it counterclockwise to remove it. We'll give it a quick inspection, set it aside. Go ahead and grab onto that cover. We're going to lift it straight up and then pull it towards the front. You can see that you have the mounting point here. That's going to need to fit into the bracket along the back side of the engine when we put this back together. Now with that out of the way, we have a nice clear view of our fuel rail. That's this area coming across here, and it goes right up and over this intake here. But the area that we need to pay attention to is this black cap located along the front. I'm going to go ahead and grab onto this. We'll turn it counterclockwise to remove it. And now that exposes a Schrader valve. Essentially for this, if you were to push in the center, it's going to spray out any fuel pressure that's inside the system. So you need to make sure you have a nice clean rag, hand and eye protection at all times. Just going to go ahead and put it right underneath this area so we can catch all of this fuel. And now just press on that center button. All right. Make sure it's nice and dry. You don't want any fuel sitting along the top of your engine. Let's go ahead and put our cap back on that. We'll put our engine cover back on and the oil fill neck. Line up this area along the front. Let's get this in here, close this up. The next thing we're going to do is get in the back of the passenger compartment. We're going to lift up on this back seat from the front. Once it breaks free, go ahead and slide it out of the way, and that's going to expose your negative battery terminal. Go ahead and use an 8mm, remove this, and set it aside so it's making no contact with the battery. Give it a quick inspection. Now from inside the trunk, let's just go ahead and grab onto this. We're going to pull it right back. That's going to expose a trap door which leads down to that fuel pump area where we need to be. Now to get this out of here, we're going to go ahead and grab onto a socket. We can remove all 5 of these bolts and get it out of the way. We'll use our 9/32 socket to remove this. Now that we have that shield out of the way, we can go ahead and blow this area clean and free of any debris. We don't want anything falling into the fuel system. The next thing that we're going to do is start disconnecting our electrical connectors. You're going to find 2 of them on this. There's one right here along the back. We'll carefully lift up on this tab, gently slide it away. Every time you remove an electrical connector, take a peek. If you see funny colors, it's corrosion and it would need to be dealt with. That looks fine. Now for this one, it has a blue lock that slides into it. All I want to do is carefully get in between that blue lock. I'm going to lift it up, grab onto this tab along the side here, pull this one off as well. Quick inspection, set it aside. Now we can move along to our 2 fuel lines. The area that holds these fuel lines on is a small piece of white plastic. It has 2 tabs on either side. All I want to do is grab onto those 2 tabs. I'm going to lightly squeeze. We'll listen for a click. Now I can grab onto the black and I can slide it right off of here. We'll do the same on this one. Pry that off. Now at this point, we can leave this just like this. I'm going to grab some penetrant. We're going to spray all along the locking ring. There's going to be ears that you want to spray near. There's one here, here, there, and then right over here. Now at this point, I went ahead and I sprayed everything down with penetrant and I let it sit for a little bit so it can kind of do its job. So to take off this locking ring, what you want to do is use a hammer and a brass punch. You never want to use a steel punch of any sort on something like this. If you did make a spark, you can imagine what might happen if you have fuel in this area. Now with that said, I'm just going to carefully get on the lip of this. We'll give it a couple bonks to try to break it free. So now at this point, we're going to have to get this off of here, but when we do it, we're going to do it all together with the fuel sending unit. When we try to pull this up, you also want to be taking it off of the fuel lines. If you can push them off now, push them off. If not, just start lifting up and pull them off at the same time. Now we're just going to start lifting this up and out of here. It's important to keep in mind it could still have fuel in it, so make sure you have a collection bucket in the area. Carefully get this up and out of here. There's going to be a couple things that you want to pay attention to. One of the first things is the strainer along the bottom. You might get caught on that. But then you also have the level, which is essentially a float. So what we need to do is tilt this on its side a little bit, pull that right out of there. Now we can put this into our collection receptacle and get it out of the back of the trunk. Now that we have the fuel pump out of there, let's go ahead and make sure that we don't have the gasket in the area. We're not going to be reusing this. Our new pump comes with one, so we'll set that aside. The next thing you want to do is pay attention to this area in here. You can see that I have a whole bunch of rust and debris. We want to make sure that we don't have any in the area with this black right here. That's the area that the gasket's going to be, and it needs to be free and clear of any debris. Go ahead and take a rag. We're going to carefully wipe this out, being very careful not to put any of it into the fuel tank. Just brush it right off and onto the side. With the fuel sending unit out of the back of the trunk, we can continue on to removing these two adapters. It's super important to make sure that you remove these, give them a good inspection to make sure they're still in good condition, and then we're going to put them onto the lines that go into the back of the trunk. To do that, I just want to get underneath each of the tabs that go along each side, and we'll carefully start sliding it off. Once I have one side slid, I'll do the exact same thing to the other side. Then you should be able to slide the entire unit off. Now you just want to give it a nice stretch. What we want to pay attention to is to see if it looks dry rotted and cracked or broken in any way. If it does, you need to replace it. This is what holds the fuel line to your sending unit. Let's do the exact same thing to this one, and then we can get back in the trunk. Now for these, what you want to do is just take it and you're going to slide it right in. We're looking for these little square notches that you can see on either side of the line. There's two of them, and there's two tabs on each of these white adapters. Line it up, slide it in, listen for a click. Do the same exact thing on the other one. Now it's time to start dealing with our brand new fuel sending unit. You're going to notice that it has this area right here that's supposed to have that little float leveler on it. Now it didn't come attached, so you have to actually attach it. To do that, you're going to go ahead and put the nub right into here, and then line it up with the rest of this, and then lock it in. Once it's lined up, press it in. Listen for a click, give it a tug to make sure it's secure. You want to make sure this is nice and tight. You don't want it to fall off while you're driving down the road. If it does, you're not going to know what level your fuel tank's at. Now in your kit, you're going to find that it came with several seals. You just want to find the one that fits directly inside this groove right here. For me personally, it's this one. I'm just going to lay it right into position inside of the groove all the way around, being careful not to drop any of the debris that's in this area into the fuel tank. Now we can take our new fuel assembly here. We'll take off these two. Now we're going to put this into position. When we do, we have to tilt it so this can slide under. Also, this has to slide under, and when it does, you want to make sure that it's not in the folded up position. It should essentially sit flat and level like this. This is the strainer where the fuel is going to get drawn up into the vehicle. Careful for that seal. You don't want it to roll over and potentially fall into the fuel tank. Just going to slide this right down in. All right, so now that we have it at this point, let's also take our locking ring, slide it right over this. Now we can start pressing this down. Once we start doing that, we'll also be connecting in our fuel lines. Now it's not going to be something that you have to worry about mixing up because one line will actually be a little bit thicker or wider than the other one. You can see right here, this one's a little bit thicker than that. You can't mix them up. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and try to press this down just enough so that we can start in each of these ears into the locking tabs. Once you have all of them started in, go ahead and continue on with your brass punch and your hammer. Once again, we're being extremely careful not to cause any type of spark in this area. Okay. All right, so now at this point, what you want to do is double check, even triple check. Make sure that this locking ring is completely secured. You do not want this to open up on you while you're driving down the road, in which case you'll have fuel vapors making its way up into the passenger compartment. Super unsafe. Okay, so now we're going to start dealing with the wiring. You're going to notice one of the wiring harnesses has 3 wires going to it. That's the one that goes over here to the fuel tank pressure switch or sensor. Now the one that has the 4 wires to it is the one that should connect right into this area here, but what you're going to notice is it's a different shape. So what I want to do is just pay attention to where each of these wires goes. I'm going to cut them one at a time, and I'm going to start connecting them into the brand new wiring harness here. When we do it, they need to go in a specific order, so you don't want to just connect them in all willy-nilly. Also, something to mention is there could still potentially be a lot of fuel vapor in this area, and if that's the case, you don't want to do any soldering. Typically, I like to solder wiring together when I'm doing something like this, but never in an enclosed area. So with that said, I'm going to use the enclosed connectors. Now, it's pretty clear that we're not necessarily going to need all this wiring. I don't want to have to go ahead and connect this in right here and have all this wiring just wrapped up in a big old ball. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and trim it down approximately halfway. You never want to go all the way close to this because, of course, we might have to make other cuts, and I don't want to go anywhere close to this connector. It's good to have plenty of slack. Let's just go ahead and cut these wires in half, and then we can continue. So now the next thing we're going to do is make our way down the line here, and essentially all we want to do is splice off these wires as well. Now, if you were staggering them on the car aspect of it, you'd also want to do the opposite on this one. So just keep that in mind. For me personally, I'm just going to keep going. I'll just get off all the outer sheathing on these, and then we can continue on with our connectors. So now this part's very important, the placement of the wiring harness when you're connecting all of your wires. This area right along here is the area with the little squeeze tab. We want to have that facing towards you or out from away from the vehicle, and we want to have it facing towards the passenger side, not in this direction. If you put it backwards, your wiring is also going to be backwards. So we're going to go ahead and take this from this angle, and we're going to be starting with this black wire. This top black wire with this facing towards us is going to go to the black wire that has the stripe on it. So let's go ahead and find that one wire, and we'll start getting ready to connect it. Let's take our connectors. We're going to slide the wire right inside there, twisting it as we go, trying to press it in as far as we can. Now we're going to crimp this down. Most wire crimpers are going to have some colors down at the very end where the crimping aspect is. The colors signify the color for the actual connector itself. So we have a red connector, I'm going to use the red. We'll get right into that slot. Make sure the wire's pressed in as far as we can. Crimp it down. Now what you're going to notice is I didn't crimp all the way down near the end here. This area is only plastic. Up near the center is where the metal crimping area is. So you need to make sure you crimp directly on it and give it a tug. Assuming that feels good, let's go ahead and grab onto this wire here. We have it facing in the right direction. We know that we're going in the right hole. Go ahead and press that right in and crimp that down as well. Give it a tug to make sure it's secure. Now we're just going to move along doing the rest of our wires. Now the rest of this is going to be the easy part. The gray wire is going to go to the gray. The purple will go to the purple, and the other black will go to the last black wire. Let's go ahead and get those connected in. Okay, so at this point I have this all connected in. I have my top black wire connected into the black wire with the white or gray tracer. I have the gray wire connected to the gray wire, the purple to the purple. And then I have my last black wire, the one all the way in the bottom of the new connector, down to the solid black wire of the original connector. Now at this point, this looks really good. I'm going to continue on by taping it off to make sure no moisture or debris can make its way into this area. Then we can go ahead and tuck it away and put everything back together. Okay, so now at this point, you can tell that I've got my wiring taped up so no moisture or debris can make its way into my connection points. Now we can go ahead and take this. We're going to tuck it underneath this area a little bit. Let's connect in that fuel tank pressure sensor. Listen for a click from that. Now we can connect in our brand new connector as well. Slide it in, listen for a click. There it is. Give both of them a tug to make sure they're secure. Once you're sure everything's secure, let's put our trap door back on here. Make sure the seal is still in good condition. We're going to rest it in position right over all the mounting holes. You can see all these areas here. They need to line up with the top holes. After you have it lined up, go ahead and start in all of your mounting bolts. Once they're all started, you can go ahead and start snugging them up. Let's put our carpet back. Time to reconnect the battery. You want to make sure this is nice and tight so it's making a positive contact. Now let's get our seat back in position. Make sure you grab all 3 of your belt buckles, slide them into position, which is the slots in the back seat here. Now we can slide it back as far as possible, push the forward end down. Make sure it's secure and all 3 of your belt buckles are in the upright position. Okay friends, the car is back together. What's left to do now? Now of course you're going to want to take it for a road test, make sure you don't smell any funny fuel smells, and make sure you don't have a check engine light. Thanks for watching.